Om Satyam Param Dhimai. Om Satyam Param Dhimai. Om Satyam Param Dhimai. Om Satyam Param Dhimai. Om Satyam Param Dhimai.
Today we'll go further into self-observation. The observation of suffering. Why would the observation of suffering be so important? Most important. Most important. Can you tell me why the observation of suffering is most important? જે દુઃખ છે, દુઃખ પ્રત્યે observation કરવું, observing I દુઃખથી અલગ થાય. Why is it most important? Break the pattern. Because we are most identified when we are suffering. We are most identified when we are suffering. So suffering is the most useful thing to wake up from the dream of life. And if we can make right use of suffering, we waste our suffering. Someone close to us dies, very close. And because we have no observing eye inside, for us what the five senses see is the only truth. And we are so identified with our suffering that a very important event in our life, which could lead to tremendous transformation, we lose out on it totally. So, like every stick has two ends. Death is a very important tool for waking up, because we are going to all die one day. And can we make use of that tool? Supposing someone has died, and I'm in a state of depression all the time. I'm in a state of mourning all the time. I'm in a state of sadness all the time. I don't make an effort to extract my consciousness from these states. What am I doing? What is going to happen? What is going to happen? What seed am I sowing? I'm sowing a seed for repetition of the same, maybe even worse. Maybe even worse. Death does not happen in just a moment. The physical body dies. But if we have had a connection with that person, if we have interacted with that person over a period of many years, then there has been a lot of interchange with that person. There is a lot of amalgamation of the pranas. So the physical dies, we think that death is over. We don't realize that death is a very long process. And something which has related to the other person for so many years is now separating, and it's going to take time. It may take a few months. And if we are in the wrong state, then we miss out on that opportunity. We lose. So, suffering, to make use of suffering, to make use of when death happens, and to extract consciousness very fast. That doesn't mean we hope for somebody to die, right? But it is going to happen. It's just round the corner. It has to happen. That is the law of life. And that is the time when we make the right use of the knowledge we have. You want to say something? Yeah.
The point where the person dies and is still connected by the prana.
Right.
So is there still a communication link between the person living in who has passed on because of your interaction during their lifetime?
It's a very strong link. It's a very strong link.
So can you sort of feel the presence, or would you be able to communicate with them at some point, knowing that they're okay, or if you're very present?
See, I just have a little bit of water. This thing of being okay. You tell me, do you really have to ask, are you okay? See, we have this, this grand idea, and especially in some religions of the world, that when you die, you go to a better place. You can only attract what you are. Your level of being can attract whatever it is. Right? If we have remained in a negative state throughout, and you expect that after death he's going to go into a positive state, can you understand? My whole life I've been very mean. Right? Huh? I've been in this closed negative state all the time, complaining all the time, and then after I die, you'll say, oh, he's gone in a better state. And when I hear all these words, "Arey, ye to bicharo chuti gaya." How is it possible? What you are, you're taking with you. Nothing can be different. If something has changed here, it will change there. If there is consciousness here and you've separated at the moment of death, then you're conscious over there. There is a continuity. Right? But here I am the worst kind of person. Right? And then you say after death he goes into a better state. So, if you know the person, you know what is happening over there. Nothing can change. Nothing can change. If something has transformed here, but there is still a link. There's still a link. And you can still help that person. You can still help that person. And that is why it's very important that the people with whom that person has been, related, there has been an exchange of prana, that person does make an effort to help that person. He sits, he communicates, right? And he tells him through whatever way to become a little conscious in that state. And also how to have a choice for the next birth. In that, in what do you call that, interval state, all our experiential history comes in front of us. Experiential history, you understand what I'm trying to say, is I meet you is an event. That is not an experience. Right? But I meet you, I'm feeling friendliness inside is an experience. But I meet you, I want to cheat you, then that is that experience. The outer event is the same. Can you see what I'm trying to say? But the experiential history is different. And this whole experiential history, not the event history, because the event history is the history of personalities, and the personality dies, right? There's no personality after death. So, that experiential history is all stored in what we call our time body. We all have a time body. And with a little bit of awareness, because what comes in that intervening period is this time body opens out. And it comes to meet us. So in that period, if you're communicating with that person, you can ask him to change some things through consciousness. And because the pranas are separating, it is very easy. And about the other person is one thing, but I am losing something just now. Somebody very close to me, say, has died. So his prana is separating from mine. The moment of death is gone. We've already cremated the body, whatever. Right? But it is still separating. If I am sensitive, not sensitiveness, sensitivity. In that sense, if there is sensitivity within me, then I can go through that experience, and it is like a death for me also, because I'm losing something. Something from which was with me is now moving into another dimension of time and space, right? And I can experience that, I can feel that, just with a little bit of sensitivity. So it's a very important period. That is why we had all these kind of, what do you call, these things, don't touch, don't do here, don't go out there, etc., etc., There was a science behind it. The science is now forgotten, and people, instead of sensitivity, they sit and watch TV or whatever, I don't know. Right? So it's very important to make right use of good suffering in our life. Good suffering in our life. Because most of the suffering in our life is useless suffering. It has no meaning at all. એટલે જે સારું સફરિંગ આપણા જીવનમાં આવે છે, આપણે એમ નથી વિચારતા કે કોઈનું મૃત્યુ થાય, પણ એ જો આવે તો એનો રાઈટ ઉપયોગ થવો જોઈએ. It's very sad. ગઈકાલે ગુરુજી વાત કરતા હતા કે આ ghazal singers which are there, they have this height, and they write such beautiful lines, right? These ghazal singers. And we were talking yesterday. But if you see their personal life, someone's son has died and she will go into deep depression for years and years. Now, if you hear her ghazals, you get it. So, in the ghazal, it's very easy to sing. Ne? But when it comes down to happening in real life, it doesn't work that way. So, right use of suffering. So today our topic is suffering. Now, there are two kinds of suffering: conscious suffering and mechanical suffering. હા, ગુજરાતી કહું. એટલે બે જાતની સફરિંગ છે. સફરિંગનું કંઈક કરવું છે ગુજરાતી? ચાલશે? ભાઈ ગેલેરીમાં પૂછી ખબર નથી. આગળ ₹5ની ટિકિટ હોય ને પાછળ ₹2ની ટિકિટ હોય કે આગળ ₹2ની હોય ને પાછળ ₹5.
ડ્રામામાં થિયેટરમાં બદલાઈ જાય. ડ્રામામાં આગળ ગેલેરીથી જાય, થિયેટરમાં પાછળ.
સફરિંગ બે જાતના છે: મિકેનિકલ, યાંત્રિક, કોન્શિયસ, જાગૃતિથી ભરેલી. Two types of suffering. Within mechanical suffering, voluntary and involuntary, or swaichik, swaichik. The first step જે આપણે લઈ શકીએ is to make involuntary suffering voluntary. આપણું પહેલું છે. But we must have the discriminating capacity, the vivek, to know what suffering is useless. Useless suffering. So first, let us get rid of all the useless suffering in our life. And there's a whole deal of useless suffering in our life. Now, all mechanical suffering will be connected with self-pity, inner accounting, internal considering. What is the first most useless suffering in our life? Has no meaning, but we suffer all the time. The first one. Most easy. Haji.
Thank you.
A good interruption of suffering.
A good practice of pause.
What others think about me, what others talk about me, how others treat me. Right? I don't know whether we suffer because of that. But this is the most useless form of suffering. એને મારી માટે આમ કીધું. Self-pity is coming. Next one is self-pity. Next one is self-pity. So I'm going first through the useless sufferings. And we are going to observe this because this is now a part of our self-observation. And we want to be free of all this as soon as possible. Because it has absolutely no meaning in our journey, all this. And do we keep thinking inside the monologue, because the next talk is going to be on inner chattering. Right? Okay. What does he or she think about me? How does he or she estimate me? Well, there's an opposite side to this. That supposing I won a lottery, or supposing I won some prize, or I won some honor, or maybe I've come first in class or something of that sort. Right? Am I very keen that everybody should know about it? See, it is the same thing. It is the same thing. Right? So, in my relationship to others, if I am expecting from others, then I'm going to suffer. And that suffering has no real meaning. It has no value at all, this suffering. Right? I'm just quickly going through this. Next is self-pity. Self-pity. What is self-pity? આપણે ઘણી વખત કરેલું છે. Self-pity એટલે શું? આજે બોલશો તો આવતીકાલે ફ્રી ટિકિટ મળશે. Poor old me. Poor old me. હું બિચારો. હું બિચારો. %80 of our Hindi songs are self-pity. Self-pity. Right? All the film directors know that self-pity is very catching. Very, very catching. It's a useless form of suffering. મારું કોઈ ધ્યાન રાખતું નથી, મને કોઈ જોતું નથી. Nobody is phoning me. I'm alone. How will I do everything? So, and self-pity can take many, many forms. Many, many forms. Later on we'll go into that in some talk. Deeper into self-pity. Dronacharya is married to Kripacharya's sister in the Mahabharata. Kripacharya's sister her name is Kripi. Self-pity. Self-pity. It is a habit. Dronacharya means habit, and self-pity has become a habit within us. We are always crying. So many people, when they talk, they have a tragic tone, as if life is a tragedy all the time. Self-pity. Self-pity is in their blood. To be aware of this. So that is the second useless suffering. The third one, suspicion. Suspicion. Where? It has no place at all. Suspicion is a terrible thing. It is a continuous loss of energy. Continuous loss of energy. And we are so identified, એવા આપણે hypnotized હોઈએ છીએ in suspicion. So suspicion can be used to wake up also, get out of it as fast as possible. It's not worth it. And what? Suspicion of what? Suspicion of what? Of what suspicion? जो वादा किया निभाना पड़ेगा. Suspicion of what? We cannot see the soul. There's no observing eye inside. And if we knew the soul, we would understand that there is nothing to be suspicious about. But suspicion kills people. It destroys people's lives. It pays lawyers' bills. And now it pays private detectives' bills also. Suspicion. Suspicion is a useless form of suffering. There's nothing in life to... See, two things cannot go together in life. Trust and suspicion. If I am suspicious about anything in life, then don't come to the temple, remove all the photos, everything. Because then I cannot trust something higher. Both cannot go together. If I am suspicious of my wife or my girlfriend or whatever, then I cannot trust. And trust is the most beautiful thing in life. Why do you want to sacrifice it for suspicion? When a person trusts, he becomes so receptive, so open, so vulnerable, so beautiful. A trusting person. And when he trusts life to its deepest core, I remember when I was 1975, I must have been 19 years old. My father, he left home for 3 months. And he went without any, just 2 sets of clothes. One he was wearing and one was in a small kind of, a bag on his shoulder. Nothing else. Here was a man who throughout his life had lived in great luxury. Right? And he left home just wearing those chappals, not a single rupee in his pocket. He had not decided to go anywhere. He said, 3 months, I'll just go wherever life takes me. And he left home. And 3 months where he was, nobody knew, because Agnat means Agnat, so no telephone or anything. Nobody knew where he was for 3 months. And of course he had nothing with him. Those days, I remember it was 21st March and it was Osho's Enlightenment Day in Pune. And he was giving lectures on Kabir's Kasturi Kundala Base. The lectures were Kasturi, it's the essence in the Nadi. Kasturi Kundala Base. The musk is in the navel. Right? The musk is in the navel. And I was in Pune at that time. And I was standing in the line to buy the ticket for the lecture. And the ticket in those days was 10 rupees. You're lucky, 2 rupee ticket is not. So, when my turn came to pay for the ticket, somebody pulled my hand and put the money there. I looked there, my father who had left home without a single penny, right? He's paying for my ticket. He's behind me in the line. Of course, he had grown a huge beard and everything. Right? And I saw a shine on his face. And 3 months, he just left home, totally surrendered, trusting, life, where your next meal is going to come from, where you are going to sleep, how you are going to go from one place to the other place. That's it. Trust. Trust transforms. But suspicion and trust can never go together. Suspicion is the worst thing we can have in our lives. It's not worth it. What? For what? For a little money? It's not worth it. So, suspicion is a very, very useless form of suffering, and it continuously releases acid in the system. Another form of suffering, which is useless, is people owe me. Who mangu chu. Right? It is called accounting. Who mangu chu. Right? I did so much for you, now you must do for me. When you were in the hospital, I came with a tiffin. Who mangu chu. I am owed. And this goes very, very deep. Very, very deep. People feel life owes them. Because you go to America and the lotteries are so, famous. Definitely everybody feels life owes them something. So, who mangu chu. Now, just as suspicion and trust go together, who mangu chu, I am owed, people owe me, what will it go with? Tell me. Very easy. What will it go with?
You owe him.
Hmm?
You owe him. He owes you.
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness. If I feel that somebody owes me, I cannot forgive anyone. I cannot forgive anyone. Right? If I feel that I still have to take something from him, but I'll take from him, but I'll forgive him, that's nonsense. It's nonsense. Because both cannot be inside at the same time. Right? If I am in a state of forgiveness, then nobody owes me anything. All my balance sheets have been cancelled of this moment. All accounts. Right? But people owe me. People owe me. And people suffer because of that. Right? I called him to my birthday party. He did not call me to this. Right? People owe me. And it goes everywhere. You go and they say, "Ke, acha, in my marriage, how many rupees did he give?" Right? Everything becomes an account. Justice. Nyaya.
Sorry, excuse me. Before we go off the story, we talk about people owe me. What about the feeling that you owe somebody? That's the opposite.
Yeah, it's the other side of the pendulum.
So is that, would you look at that in the same light as well?
It depends. If you can turn that into external considering, transform that into external. Just now it is an account within you. But if you can transform that into external considering, then it is a different thing. I'll talk about external considering some other day. In external considering, you become the other person. You become the other person. Right? And in becoming the other person, it may drop that I owe him anything. You get it? Supposing you feel you owe me. But if you become me, then you will see why I did this for you, then it will drop. Then you won't feel that you owe me anything. You get what I'm trying to say? So, the real thing is external considering. That is a beautiful state to be in. I'll talk about it one day. Where you become the other person. You understand the other person. You realize his difficulties. And especially when that person is negative and unpleasant towards us. At that point, if we can be, okay, where is that unpleasantness coming from? Why is he unpleasant? What is forcing him to act in this way? And if we can go into him and understand that. Right? So, and this I owe or I am owed, it will always go together. It will always go together. If I feel I owe, I will also be holding a lot of grudges against others. Right? So, the real thing is to externally consider. External considering in in the Indian, this thing was called as seva. Seva. But now seva has become it's a very wrong term. They've lost the science of seva. So, the science of seva has gone away. So, unless it is done with consciousness, bhakti and jnana have to go together. If bhakti and jnana don't go together, then that bhakti will just be a kind of very, bhakti without any science in it. Nothing is going to come out of it. So we'll talk about that. But this is just the opposite end of the pendulum. So, nyaya, justice. What is wrong in our idea of justice? If I say this is not just, where have I gone wrong? I'm not accepting the fact. Unless I can accept the fact, how will I move to the truth? If I say that you have come wrongly in line and it is not just, right? And I have this feeling of injustice being done towards me, then I'll never be able to accept the fact. And the fact is you have come wrongly in line. That is the fact. And the journey towards truth starts with the acceptance of fact. Very difficult. But we all have ideas of what is just and what is not just. Now, one of the very meanest things in I am owed, what is it? The meanest thing in I am owed. The lowest level of you owe me. What is the lowest level of you owe me? The lowest level of you owe me. You should say sorry to me. You should say sorry to me. We expect other people to say sorry. We expect other people to apologize. This is a very negative ego. Very, very negative ego. Why should somebody say sorry to me? જ્યાં સુધી મને માફી નહીં માંગે તો એના ઘરે પગે જ નહીં મૂકવું. મૂકવું જ નહીં. Why should somebody say sorry to me? All this suffering is absolutely useless suffering. It has no place for a person who is walking on the spiritual path. All this suffering. And if I'm still suffering anywhere in any of these, please look inside. Get rid of it fast. It's not worth holding on to any of this. As long as there is mechanical suffering in our life, there can never be spirituality in our life. Both these things cannot go together. જ્યાં સુધી મારા જીવનમાં હજી આ બધું યાંત્રિક દુઃખ છે, ત્યાં સુધી અધ્યાત્મ આવી જ શકે નહીં. Because the whole of spirituality is to rise in consciousness, and here I am hypnotized by the suffering. How can both move together? Actually, to walk on the path, we have to pay. We have to pay, and the only payment we can give is our suffering. Be free of suffering. Because the only real suffering in life is suffering for consciousness. That is the only real suffering in life. The meaning of the word sacrifice is to make holy. We will change the word holy to make conscious. To make conscious. Right? Sacrifice your suffering. See, I'm trying to make an observing eye. I'm trying to separate. Now, if I'm suffering, am I separate? How is it possible? Then I'm stuck. Both the pieces of wood are stuck together. Have to give up your suffering. Now, why is there suffering in the world? Because people come and say to me that if we have to be free of suffering, why did God create suffering? It's a wrong question, but we'll take it up today. Why is there suffering in the world? Suffering on the grand scale of the universe. It has a place. It has a certain place. Any jagya છે. જે યુનિવર્સનું સ્કેલ છે એમાં સફરિંગની જગ્યા છે. શું કામ સફરિંગ ભગવાને મૂક્યું છે? What does it do? What is the...
Make you realize the truth.
That is if you become conscious of the suffering. But who becomes? The whole world is suffering. There's suffering in the Middle East, there's suffering all over. Right? So nobody's realizing the truth. It's becoming worse. Why has suffering been put here on this planet Earth?
To take the energy.
Right. 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 It has a place in the divine scheme of things, in the map of the world. It has a place that all the animals, the plants, humanity on the earth, they are taking in energy and they release that energy in suffering, in the negativity of suffering. Nature takes that energy, uses it for something. So, as long as we are suffering in life, we are just a part of nature's machinery. Mm-hmm. We have not become human beings. We are just a part of nature, especially all this useless suffering.
Just a little bit explain more that story to me. I just need to get that into, you must say story to me. I just want for you to expound on it just a little bit.
Okay. This year actually I wanted to take the law of octaves, but I postponed it. And I wanted to take the ray of creation from the divine, all worlds, one world, sun, solar system, earth, moon. This is one ray. Like that there are many rays. Right? And how they are created, I wanted to go into that. And what are the laws operating on each scale. That was my original idea this time. But somehow I was not sure whether people would, But I'll try and touch a little this time, yeah. So then I said I'll just take small topics of daily life. But that was my original idea, to go into that and to go into those laws this time. Now, as this ray of creation comes down, between the earth, the planets and the moon, there is a kind of gap. And the whole of organic life was made to fill that gap. The moon needs a certain kind of energy. On this side there is a certain kind of energy, and they needed a transformer to take this energy and give it to the moon in the kind of energy which the moon needed. Like outside the electricity is going at 220,000 volts, but when it comes to my home it is 200 volts. So there is a step down transformer. So between the sun and the planets and the moon, there had to be a step down. So the earth was covered with organic life. Organic life took energy from the sun, transformed the energy. Plants take energy from the sun, they transform that energy. Animals take energy from the sun, they transform that energy. Man takes energy from the sun. And all that energy which we throw out, when man has war, he kills each other. All the energy which he throws out goes to the moon. And one day the moon will become more like a living planet because of this energy. Now this is the scheme in the divine thing. It has nothing to do with science, because there is nothing in science to prove this. Right? So you can't go to a scientist. Now, does a plant have self-consciousness? No. It has only an outgoing consciousness. The attention cannot go in. Does an animal have self-consciousness? No. The attention can only go out. It cannot go in. But man has self-consciousness. Now, why was self-consciousness given to man? Why was self-consciousness given to man? Because the quality of the energy which the plants and the animals were giving was falling a little short. Something more was needed. And that is why man was given self-consciousness. Now, when he was given self-consciousness, they had to put something called the divine fragment, Atma, into man. Right? Only then can there be self-consciousness. Right? Animals and plants, they have a universal mind. They do not have a individual mind. Man has an individual mind because there is a divine fragment in man. Now, man has two choices. One, he can be a part of nature's machinery, take all the energy, throw it out in negative emotions and give it to the moon. But because he has self-consciousness, if he moves the attention to self, to realize what this self-consciousness is, then he realizes the deepest mystery of the universe, why the universe was created, because that fragment to give him self-consciousness, they had to put into man. So man has two destinies. One destiny just to be a machine of nature, and one destiny to rise and become God. It is within him what he wants to do. Right? This is why suffering was created, because in suffering we give out all this energy. We think that two countries are fighting a war. It has nothing to do with two countries. The moon is little short of food supply just now, he makes two countries go to war. Can you understand? Because everywhere man is mechanical. Man can only be free of war if he rises in consciousness. You get what I'm trying to say? But by making United Nations and by making pacts and all that, he'll never be free of it. Because then he's still a part of the whole machinery, and that machinery was to create more wars. So, all this, this whole suffering is coming to us from a higher scale. And when we start our individual self-observation, we have to hold that consciousness to fight that higher scale. Because that does not want us to go to sleep. In the old Shastras, you will have all these stories where somebody is now sitting in meditation and Indra cannot take it. So he will send somebody, he will send Menka, he will send some, but you disturb his meditation. Because then that person is no longer a part of the machinery of nature. And Indra means Indriyo. Indra cannot stand that. Right? So, all these stories are there. So, suffering is an intrinsic part of life. There is right use of suffering, there is wrong use of suffering. We have talked only about getting rid of useless suffering. Useless suffering. So, I just gave you a few points on useless suffering. Let's go a little more into it. Just ask yourselves, how did I spend today? What did I do today? Did I spend my day in self-pity? Did I spend my modu chadavine baitho to? Sulking? Right? Was I miserable? Then all this is useless suffering. I'm just a machinery in life. Now, what is the key to be free from suffering? What is the key to be free from suffering? If I am suffering, it is my fault. If I am suffering, it is my fault. This is the first step. The first step. Jene je kayu. Whatever anybody else does, whatever way anybody treats me, if I am suffering, it is my fault. Only then will we be free of it.
How do you see the fault?
Huh?
How does one then see the fault?
There we'll come to that, but this is a basic thing we have to take. That nobody else is at fault. Nobody else is at fault. Okay, now which is the first suffering in our lives? We are all quite old over here. Which is the first suffering in our life? Come on. The first suffering in our life. The suffering between man and woman. The suffering between man and woman. Right? You get married. What happens? Where does it start? આટલા વર્ષ લગ્ન ના થયા પણ હજી એ તો મને સમજી જ ન શક્યો. Right? Where does it start? Huh? Where the mother-in-law comes. Yes.
Sorry, define what suffering is.
Huh?
Define what suffering is.
Yeah, so I said suffering has a cosmic purpose. That is why I gave that whole thing, that suffering has a cosmic purpose. And when we are trying to be free of suffering, we are trying to be free on our individual scale. And we are fighting something which is on a cosmic scale. It's hard work. Hard work. Right? And it happens. Okay, the man passes throughout his life and he feels he never met the woman who understood him. Right? People come and they say, "Bhai, कहीं को सारू करवा जाओ क्या बच्चे टपकी पर." I go to do something. Can you see this suffering? I go to do something in the morning. I'm just going out of the house and she'll come from behind. Suffering of man and woman. This has to be transformed. No? Sure.
Isn't that what life is about? Yeah, that's what life is about.
Yeah. Don't suffer.
Suffer silently.
Huh?
Suffer silently.
No. Rise above it. This is not worth it. People say all sorts of things. કે ભાઈ હું કોલેજમાં હતી તો એટલી બ્યુટીફુલ હતી. They come and tell me. As if by telling me all the suffering is going to go away. એટલી બ્યુટીફુલ હતી, એટલા છોકરાઓ મારી પાછળ પડ્યા હતા પણ મળ્યો તો. The suffering of man and woman. Or that she puts him down all the time. She never supports me. Whenever I'm saying something, she's always negative. Many women, they say that even though we are married, we don't feel we are married at all. There is no warmth in the marriage. There is, some say that I'm suffering because we don't have a child. Other people are suffering because they have too many children. I remember one girl, she used to phone me up. Okay, my baby is crying. So, and even I sent medicine. She cried a little less. Then she started calling up. Now the baby is not crying any longer. Any excuse to suffer. And then there's a suffering between parents and children. The child feels the parents have not understood them. The parents feel the child owes to them. So all these sufferings, just in one perspective, if you can look at them, you will be free of them. It's so easy. Just sacrifice the suffering, get rid of it. It's not worth suffering. Another form of suffering, if only. मैं आम कहिरू होत तो. I was so beautiful. If I had married somebody else. If life had given me a better chance. If I had met you early. I have only a son. Suppose I had a daughter. If only I had a daughter. And I am very short, so I also used to feel if I had been a little taller. And if I had not wasted my money, And if the color of my skin was like this, and if my nose was little like this, I would be the best actress. If only somebody sympathized with me, if only somebody appreciated me. Can you see all this suffering? Some people feel they have failed. There's a sense of failure. And when you look down upon it, it usually comes to one thing: they don't want to make effort. They don't want to make effort. रामदुलारे बापू used to say, सब कुछ नियोजित है, फिर भी उसका आयोजन करना पड़ता है. What in our life is niyojit and what do we have to ayojit? What in our life has come as a rule, niyojan and ayojan, what we have to do personally, what is our purusha? This must be clearly defined. Don't try to change anything which is niyojan, which has been already put there. However many scientific pills I take, I'm not going to get 2 inches taller. Niyojit. But I can make the best of it. Ayojit. And a time comes when people enjoy being a failure. And I see it in young children. They failed in 1 or 2 subjects and then they start enjoying being a failure. People are failures in love. Or I loved her but she went somewhere else. Now I will never love anyone else. All women are like this only. Can you see the laziness which comes out of it? The inertia which comes out of it? Then these people, there is no possibility for them. In Gurdjieff's language, we used to call them as irreparable machines. Nothing can come out of their life. So, being a failure in life is a very dangerous form of suffering. Because from there to go anywhere, all roads are sort of blocked. And then a certain ego comes with that failure. And a person cannot get out of that ego. And many people, if you ask them about their failure, they have a fallback strategy. I failed because I studied economics. At that time I should have studied law or something. They'll tell you they have a fallback strategy. It's not their fault. And these are the most difficult kind of people to talk anything into. To be free of suffering, we have to sacrifice our self-love, we have to sacrifice our vanity. Yesterday we were listening to some ghazals at night. So, I was telling Guruji, this girl is saying that you come to me. Whatever is your ego, I will accept it. Whatever is your ego, I will accept it. नाज हम सारे उठा लेंगे तुम आओ तो सही. Naz, pride. The Muslims do namaz to dissolve the pride. To dissolve the pride. And she's saying to this person, your ego is so, don't worry, your ego is so big, whatever. But I'll accept it. But we have to, if we want to be free of suffering, we cannot hold our vanity and say, I don't want to suffer. Because that very vanity is the seed of suffering. Then this vanity is going to feel hurt. Then this vanity is going to feel insulted. It's going to suffer. It has to dissolve. Namaz. Dissolve. Real suffering. What is real suffering? If I've forgotten to do my exercises in the morning, do I suffer? There's no real suffering in our life. Have I practiced even for 5 minutes today to separate the observing eye? And if I've not done it in the night, is there suffering? Oh, today I didn't do it. The only real suffering in life is suffering for consciousness. For consciousness. Whatever effort I'm making to wake up from the sleep of life, if I have missed out today and I don't suffer, then there is no real suffering in my life. The only real suffering in my life is, why am I still suffering in all this self-pity and vanity and what others say about me? That's suffering inside. That why am I still suffering? It's not worth suffering, but still I'm suffering. She said this about me today. Please understand, we can only forgive another person through self-observation. There is no other way to forgive another person. If somebody has insulted me, I say he's a very egoistic person. Unless through self-observation I see the same ego in me, this my ego which I see in me cancels that ego which I see in him, there is forgiveness. But if I go to forgive somebody, immediately I forgive somebody, there is a feeling, I have done something so good, meritoriousness. It's even worse than that. Feeling of doing something good. I have done something good. And one loves to remain in that feeling. Are मैं कितलू सारू काम करूँ, इन्हें माफ करो. They should really, if we want to walk on this spiritual path, we need conscious suffering. That I'm still a machine. When will I be free of being a machine? That's suffering. If the divine is within me, why am I not realizing it? That's suffering. That is real, important, good suffering. Actually, in the New Testament, the Bible, many things have not been taken, which were a part of Christ's life. And one of the books which is not taken in the New Testament is called the Acts of John. And it's a very mystic book, very, very mystic book. And some of the things the Christians cannot accept. And one of them is that Christ cannot laugh. So Christ, whenever you see he's never laughing. He's never dancing. He's never enjoying life. And I'm sure that was not the case. So in the Acts of John, before Christ leaves his disciple, there's a description of a very, very mystical dance. And the last words which Christ says over there, when the dance ends, if thou hadst known how to suffer, thou would have been able not to suffer. If there was right suffering in your lives, you would know how not to suffer. Learn how to suffer. Learn what is right suffering. And then thou shalt be able not to suffer. There is only one yagna in life. Of course, Guruji does many yagnas. There is only one yagna in life. Transforming the suffering into the fire of yagna. Whatever suffering comes in our life, create the yagna out of it. Yagna comes from the word, same root as the word yoga. To join with the divine, to join with the higher. So, life, whatever suffering comes in our life, start with observing I. Use that suffering. Make a yagna out of that suffering. Make the fires of tapa out of that suffering. And in that all these impurities will die. My vanity will go. My ego will go. My self-love will go. Freedom. Freedom. Do we really value freedom? Then all the impurities will go into that yagna. That is the real yagna. That is the real yagna. Well, any questions? Anyone else? You want to take a little bit of the law of octaves? Huh?
One question.
Right.
You mentioned something about the musk of the nadis.
No. The musk deer. The musk deer is called as kasturi. And the musk is in its navel. So Kabir has written a series of dohas on this. Right? So it is Kasturi Kundalavase. Kabir has written.
And what is a mystical dance?
Pardon?
What is mystical dance? You mentioned mystical dance.
Ras. Where the inner female meets the inner male. Where the inner Krishna meets the inner Radha. But that cannot be accepted in Christianity. So he must have done it very secretly. Inner marriage. The inner marriage.
It is a physical sort of dance.
Dance to it. There's a physical dance to it. I don't know if you've heard of Narsi Mehta. There have been so many bhakti yogis in our tradition. But Narsi Mehta has maybe gone the deepest of all of them. And many of his bhajans, they are on Rati Bhav. Rati Bhav means sex. And he's talking about the meeting of Radha and Krishna. And they're very, very deep. Very, very deep. No other bhakti yogi has had the guts to write this, what he has written. And I'm going to ask my father-in-law to sit with him. I want to go through those two. I want him to explain to me what is the mystery in those. So that is the deepest form of ras. Deepest form. All of Christ's disciples were, of course, male, so he must have shown them in some other way. Right? But definitely there must have been some mystical dance where there is an inner female and an inner male merging into something. Narsi Mehta was a devotee of Shiva. And he got enlightened in a place called Gopnath, which is near Bhavnagar. And the enlightenment came in a very material form, in that Shiv came in some form to him. Now, this is, you can say it is imagination, but it's not imagination. This is a very, very high form of visualization. Right? And it's like the divine has come from in to out. And he's taking any form he can take. But because he was a, what do you call, devotee of Shiva, he took the form of Shiva. And they have a conversation. And then when the conversation is getting over, Shiva says, I'm going now. So he says, where are you going? So he says, I'm going to Vrindavan to see the Rasa of Radha and Krishna. So then he asked Narsi Mehta, do you want to come with me? So they both go in the, he leaves the physical body and they both go. Whoever took him, his higher intelligence, whatever we want to say, some took him. And he sees this, and he sees it for so many days, I don't know how many days. And then he, from a Shiv Bhakti, becomes a Krishna Bhakti. Right? And then he writes those, what he saw. And they are full of with the deepest secrets of yoga, tantra, right? They're just not ordinary bhajans. And so maybe someday we can talk about them also. Right? But it would be something really beautiful. And he had the guts to write it. With all the, in those days, society was not as free as we take it today. Right? And he had
Can there be any pleasure without suffering?
Pardon?
Can there be any pleasure without suffering? So I can't think of all the examples, but I'm talking about marriage, and I'm just thinking like there's a lot of suffering in marriage. If you were out married, then you don't get the suffering, but if you're not in marriage, you don't get the pleasure. Or whatever aspect you
It's a two-way stick. It's a two-way stick. The suffering is there in marriage to transform. So by running away from suffering, we cannot transform suffering. Then we'll keep on running away from suffering. So that is not the right way. That is the hippie way. Right? But we cannot, the real way is to transform suffering and rise to something higher.
Yeah, I thought that was the Buddhist too, like sitting on honesty and...
Those were the old days. Those were the old days. Not today's brain cannot do that. Go in a monastery. Today's brain lives in a family life and rises. From there it rises. So those days of where you leave life and wear orange clothes and go to a monastery or this thing, it's for the brain which was there 200 years ago. Or maybe 75 years ago. Today's brain can't do it. He'll be daydreaming there also. It's not possible. It has to transform what is in front of him. The normal life. And that is why I only talk on the way of life. The way of life. That whatever material we want for our spiritual development is right where we are. We don't have to go anywhere for that. And by transforming that, we get it. I'm not saying those paths were wrong, but they are outdated. They're outdated. They're not relevant to today's time. Bolo. કાલે ભાવ વધારો આવશે.
Will you be touching on that some other time or
Unless there is observing eye, how are we going to do seva? How are we going to do seva? Unless something is separated within us. No? How are we going to do seva? We won't know what to dissolve. Right? We'll just create a new ego of seva.
Isn't doing seva is also to dissolve the ego?
Yeah, but it just creates a new ego. Because there is no observer inside. Seva comes after the creation of the inner observer. Now seva has become a shortcut to escape from a person who does not want to work on himself. He works for others. You get it? First there must be work on self. Then comes work with others. But if there is no work on self, how can I work with others? I have not understood myself. Right? Then it is social work, it is not seva. Social work is good. You become a good person. You are not a spiritual person. Social work. You don't see seva anywhere. It's all social work. Seva is I know what I have to dissolve in the act of doing with others. I understand the other person. Here there is no understanding. Somebody does not have food, feed him. Somebody does not have clothes, clothe him. Somebody does not have shelter, give him. But there is no real seva to how is this person whom you are doing seva for, how are you helping him to be free of the hypnosis of life? You are doing social work, you are not doing seva. Seva is where you teach that person to dissolve his ego. You get what I am trying to say? That is seva. You are doing social work, you are giving somebody a home and you are giving somebody, it's a good thing. It doesn't have anything to do with spirituality. But if it comes as an outcome of your inner transformation, there have been so many masters who have realized the truth and then gone into seva. That is a different thing. That is an outcome of their understanding themselves. Understand? It's absolutely different. It's become so ridiculous because I go to America and there are these big temples in America. And 15-year-old boys who should be going to college and all that, they are going to give seva in the temples. And they don't know what they are doing. The teacher doesn't know what their teacher is teaching them. They don't know what they are doing. Right? Because the teacher himself has not dissolved his ego. How is he going to teach them to dissolve the ego? How is he going to tell them how to create something separate within inside? He has to teach them the science, no? It's a big mess. It's a big mess. And somebody criticizes them, they become negative. Where there's negativity, there's no seva. If I criticize this temple and say that temple is better, gone. The science has gone out of the temples. It's so, sometimes, huge temples you see in America, and there is no science in the making of the murti. There is no science in how they are arranging things. It's like a big go down where they've collected all the gods, you know. You go and worship whichever god you want to go. It's like a go down. The inner science of awakening has been lost. Yeah.
If you have a feeding scheme and you're feeding a lot of people, and then you have a lecture to those people on how to whatever, to make them better. Your understanding, is that safe?
What I am saying that seva starts after observing I. That is what I am trying to say. Is when something within me has separated. Because what seva you are doing is through your sensual thinking, the thinking of the five senses. There is no intelligence beyond the five senses. You get what I am trying to say?
So that's the one we do is more awareness. Yes. Awareness.
So once there is an observing eye, something is seeing from within. Then when you meet the person, you say this person is poor. But now you don't just say he's poor, you know all the laws which have put him in this condition. Why is he in this condition? And what is the right way to help him? You get what I'm trying to do? Here, there's just one thing. If somebody is needy, give him. Why is he in that condition? What has led him to? What kind of seeds has he sown that has put him in this condition? What do I have to teach him? Unless I can become him, unless something within me has separated, I am looking from another dimension. How am I going to help him? All I can do is give him food to eat or clothes to wear or whatever. And that, according to my five senses, I have done the right thing. It's good. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it's good. But it's social work. It is not seva. Seva is something totally different. I know how he has come into this condition. And I say, which is the right way to help him? I'll tell you a recent case, very recent case. Somebody was in a lot of trouble. Now, here's a person with a very good job. He's married, has a beautiful child. Now, some fear has got into him. Right? He can't do his job, he can't live at home. So, I was coming here at that point, and when suddenly he phoned me, he has been phoning me for a week that this was happening. And I was coming here, and if I was not coming here, I would have gone to stay with him for 10-15 days. Right? And I would have been very strict with him. I would have got up at 3 in the morning, woken him up, come sit with me, start doing what I'm doing. Right? And I know in those 15 days, just by him making him do what I'm doing, he would get out of it. But because I had to come here, I couldn't. So I phoned his father and I said, this is the program. Very strict. Very strict. Right? So what does the person need? Right? Somebody needs food, but somebody else may need a whip. You get it? Now, if the person who needs a whip, you're still giving him food because you don't know yourself. You say he is hungry, this one is hungry. It's not seva. You understand what I'm trying to say? Every person has an individual need out of how he has come into that situation. No? Real external considering is I become, how have I come there? And what do I do to get out of this?
This expression, teach someone to fish, that's not
Same thing.
Is it similar?
Very similar, very similar.
But not quite.
You see, I'm feeding you just now, but I see what is right for you. I see what is right for you. Not what makes you happy just
Maybe
now.
it's not teaching him to fish, it's teaching him something else.
That is the whole thing, no? In the Gita, Krishna tells Arjun that I won't do what is pleasing towards you. I'm not going to, pat you on the back or something. Arjun is in trouble. I'll only do what is right for you. Tara shreya ma karis, tara prema nahi kar. And this is very important, very important. Because I go to people's home and I see children, but parents are trying to please the child all the time. Very rarely do you see a parent who is, looking what is right for the child. Right? See? And you see the toys, and you see this, and you see that, right? And you see this child there is nothing really going to be, tempered in this child. He's just going to have a very beautiful life. And in that very beautiful life, there's not going to be that urge to wake up in his life. There must be some suffering in life. My son is working in Bombay. So he phoned me about 1 or 2 months ago, I want to buy a car. So I said, okay, we'll buy it, but why don't you 6 months just still keep going by train, then we'll think about it. They have to be tempered. He needs a car, get him a car. My wife got very angry on me. So, I understand. That was expected.
Was that part of not suffering? Was that part of your not suffering?
No, they have to go through a little suffering. Now he himself is telling me that it's very good I didn't buy the car. I wouldn't have learned how to go through all this trains and all. So, what is right for them? That is seva. I'm not saying I'm doing seva, but what is right for the person? Feeding a person is not seva. Every person has a seed within him, the seed of divinity. And that seed remains dry throughout a person's life. People are born, people grow up, they get degrees, they go to colleges, they have the best of life, but the seed of awakening, the seed of divinity remains without a single drop of water. And the real seva is that. Okay. This has been going on for life after life. That seed inside, can we teach the person to water his own seed? Christ calls it the mustard seed. And within that small seed, all the laws of the universe are lying there. Everything is lying in that small seed. Just we have to teach him how to water it. And suddenly the whole mystery of life will open up. Yeah? Yes. Yeah.
Would you say empathy is an approximation to seva?
Empathy, becoming the other person. Becoming the other person. Stop here? Yeah.
Following on the empathy, if you reward something, you get more of it. And if the behavior is bad and you reward it, or you have empathy, you get more of the bad behavior. Isn't that a bad thing?
Yeah, I don't get it. What you're saying?
If you reward bad behavior by being empathizing too much, you get more bad behavior. Is that not possible?
No. What I'm talking about is an external considering. When I become the other person. It's no question of rewarding him for his bad behavior or anything. I try to see what is right for this person. That is what I'm trying to do. On this path, anything we do for reward or punishment has no meaning at all. Should we stop here? Good night. Jai Shri Krishna.